how long did it take from, like the first line of code up to the time where the person like using it just like go and pay for it?
So I think I built the first prototype within a week, like something that Danielle could use. And then I think we refined it for around a month.
Hey, Bootstrappers! Welcome to Bootstrap Stories, the podcast where founders, marketers, and thoughtful leaders share the most actionable tips on building a successful business. After meeting with hundreds of bootstrappers in the past years, I figured out that we all struggle to grow our businesses. But the truth is that most of us don't know where to ask for help or advice. That's why I decided to start this podcast, to give you all the keys to succeed at every stage of your business. All the tested strategies for solving your struggles and taking your business to a new level. No fluff, no bullshit, only a real talk between friends that help each other succeed. My guest for this episode is Arvid Kahl, the founder of FeedbackPanda, a bootstrap company that is sold in 2019. He's also the guy behind the blog, The Bootstrap Founder. Arvid, thank you for accepting my invitation. It's really cool to have you on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I've really been looking forward to our conversation today.
For me as well, to be honest, I've been following you on Twitter for quite some time. I've read your book. I also bought your recent training on building an audience, which is something I guess we will discuss on the podcast a bit later on. And to be honest, I'm a huge fan, so really happy to have this chat with you.
Well, I can only give that back. I've been following you on Twitter for a while, and I'm a huge fan of what you're doing too, and of everything that you've been writing and sharing as well. I always feel founders who are in the middle of building a business, they are always super busy. I know that, having been there, and you barely have time to eat, but then to find time to actually talk to people, to run a podcast, or just write articles and share what you know. That is wonderful. That's incredibly empowering. So thank you for doing this. Having done this over the last years, even for you, thanks so much for all the knowledge that you've been sharing, because that inspired me as well.
Thanks. That's awesome. And this podcast really is for like all the bootstrap entrepreneurs out there. And I'd love to get back, to FeedbackPanda. Can you give me a bit more about how did the idea came, and also how you got started, how you got your first customers?
Sure, absolutely. So that was, must have been back in 2016, 2017. I was working from home 2 days a week, and I was working present in an office in a different city the other 3 days. So I was commuting a lot. At the same time, my girlfriend, Danielle, who was also the co-founder of our business and the CEO of FeedbackPanda after we founded it, she was working from home, and she was teaching English online on the internet, through the browser for Chinese kids, just teaching Chinese kids English as a second language. And she was spending a lot of time just teaching these kids, and it was wonderful. It was one of the cutest things you can imagine as a job. Having a 6-year-old Chinese kid that doesn't speak a word of English sitting in front of you with a camera, and you have to play with toys and get their attention and teach them a language through immersion. It was a really funny thing to watch. It was really enjoyable for her to do, because it's amazing to teach and see somebody learning right in front of you, even if they are on the other side of the world. But what was not fun for Danielle was that after she was done teaching, she had to do student feedback. So the parents of the kid would learn what the kid actually learned in class. And since they didn't want to watch half an hour video, you had to type it into a couple sentences. But as this was a Chinese business, Chinese school, I guess, that had a very strict curriculum that every single teacher had the exact same thing, you had to teach the same stuff over and over to different kids. And we knew that every teacher has the exact same stuff that they need to write down after each class. So Danielle started building a little, I wouldn't call it tool. I would call it more like a makeshift solution. She had a Word document here and an Excel sheet there, and she would have little templates for, okay, we learned about an apple today, or today we talked about the color green, these little fragments. But every time she would use it, she would copy it and then put in the student's name. And then next time she would copy something else, put in that student's name. And if you're a software engineer, and I was at the point, and you see somebody using text and replacing parts of the text text with a variable, you immediately think of templating, you think of text substitution algorithms or whatever. So when I saw her system and I saw, okay, I can build something better, because I'd been a software engineer for a decade at this point. I built a lot of SaaS businesses, a lot of platforms for my bosses and for the businesses that I worked for. So I built a little solution for her. She told me what she needed. I built it. She said, no, I built a better one. And she said, fine. And then she used it for her own needs, right? And then after a while, it was so good that we just opened it up for the other people in her community. And community it was, because most of these teachers teaching for these schools, they were on Facebook, in forums, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. They were present as a teacher, online English as a second language teacher community. And we just put it right in there. Our marketing was almost exclusively word of mouth, because we had this community that Danielle was a part of, being a teacher, and that I had a vision into as the person building tools for it. And from there, we got our first couple dozen users on the first day. We started marketing the product. One of the most enjoyable things that I could talk about with the business wasn't just the sale. The sale was great, but our first customer tried to buy a subscription to FeedbackPanda before I had even switched the Stripe test key for the production key. Like they literally couldn't buy it because we didn't expect people to already subscribe. So I had to quickly do this and then tell them, you can buy our product now. It was really cool. Yeah, and it grew out in 2017. It grew from a little zero MRR product to a $55,000 MRR product month over month, pretty steadily, until 2019, when we sold the business or the product of the business to a private equity company for what I'm allowed to say is a life-changing amount of money. And and ever since then, I've been writing, I've been doing stuff where I share what I learned with the people that are in the position that I was in a couple of years ago. Because I told you already that I was 2 days at home, 3 days commuting to a different city. That was the time when I read a lot of books. That's when I listened to a lot of podcasts like this. And hopefully somebody out there is listening to this right now thinking, oh, wow, I have all this time. Let's think about what I could do to build a business, right? To learn more, to have the foundation, to then build a business on top. So I used a lot of that time to learn. And then when the time was right, I used the technology that I was already using at my day job to build a little side project, which was FeedbackPanda. And that ultimately changed my life and Danielle's life as well, obviously.
Yeah, that's really great. What I love about like your story is how you focused, on your own problem with Danielle to build something that was first useful for her. And then after that, find other people in the same spot who could also benefit from it. And how long did it take from, the first line of code up to the time where the person using it just go and pay for it?
So I think I built the first prototype within a week, something that Danielle could use. And then I think we refined it for around a month. And it was all moonlighting, right? I was still working my day job. She was teaching 10 to 12 hours a day. So we really didn't have that much time, but we used the weekends and nights and stuff to turn this into a product. And I've been building SaaS businesses or SaaS software for quite a while. So I knew exactly how to integrate Stripe. I knew how to build an account management system. I knew how to build a CRUD app, quickly use an interface, a UI system like Tailwind or Bootstrap or whatever you would use, right? To quickly build a tool that's good enough. Obviously the first version of the product looked like a first version of the product. It was an MVP. It was very right? But at that point, it may have been minimal, but it solved a very critical problem. And that made it immediately useful to people. And that's the thing that I found with most things that I see be really successful, even in the most bare bones form, even when it looks like somebody coded that up yesterday, it is useful today. Those are successful businesses. And that's what FeedbackPanda was, because we took what took Danielle 2 hours every single day, which is horrible, 2 hours of administrative work, just typing reports, and condensed it into 5 minutes. And 5 minutes is something that everybody can throw in quickly and then spend the remaining 1 hour and 55 minutes with their children, right? Or doing something else, maybe teaching more, making more money. There was immediate value to those people who used our product. They noticed it immediately. We had a generous 30-day free trial. So people got a lot of investment into our product too, right? They started using it. They put their templates in. They started like writing their own reports, and they noticed very quickly, oh, wow. Every time I do something new, the next time I do it, it takes me like a second, right? Yeah. Instead of writing it out. And we also had like a little, we call this the FeedbackPanda cloud, where teachers could share their feedback templates with each other. So instead of having to write your own thing, you could just say, yeah, this looks good, pull it in, adjust it, and then you could use it within, again, a couple seconds. So all of these effects really made the product useful. But yeah, it took me a week to build a prototype, maybe a month for us to get it out of the door, and then continuous iteration, right? Whenever we had a new idea, whenever a customer told us that something didn't work, we immediately fixed it. We immediately got to work, and we kept it running as a side project in this mode for almost, I would say, like maybe 6 months or something. We had $10,000 of monthly recurring revenue, and we were still using having day jobs. We were still full-time employees. Only nice. Then did we switch, because we wanted to make sure this can replace our income, right? We wanted to be absolutely sure this bootstrap business is not going to drain our resources. It's going to contribute to our wealth. And that's what it did.
No, that's really nice. And I think actually that's an advice like you give also a lot to people, is like starting as a side project, and then when you can actually sustain yourself for long enough, then you can make the switch. And what I'm curious about is like, okay, when you're quitting your job and you're like, okay, I'm going to go full time, what was your idea behind it? Was it to hire like more people like quickly, or was it more like, okay, Daniel, we're going to do that like together, like focus, keep grinding, and increase like the MR?
Yeah, it was the latter one, because we never hired. Like we had this business for 2 years. We had 5,500 customers or something, and we were still just 2 people that were actually employees of the business. We had a couple contractors. Sometimes somebody wrote a blog post. Sometimes somebody would help us with some Instagram stuff, or like social media. But we never had a full-time or part-time employee. It was just really the 2 owners of the business. And I read the book Built to Sell by John Warlow in the beginning. Again, on the train from Berlin to Hamburg, which is a 2.5-hour train ride, 2.5 hours. So I had a lot of time to read. And I read this book and I thought, okay, what Warlow says is that a good business is a sellable business, right? Built to sell. So build a business so you could sell it. But a sellable business is also a good business, right? It's an equal situation. So the more you optimize for a business to be sellable, for somebody to take it in and replace you with somebody else, or have a lot of automation, have good documentation, the better the business is. So if you build a sellable business, you don't need to sell it, but it will be good. That's kind of what the book put in my mind. So from the beginning, we built FeedbackPanda to be a sellable business, but we never intended to sell it, at least not for the first year or so. So we optimized a lot in terms of automation, like our customer service tool. We used Intercom throughout the business. It was highly automated, a lot of automated responses, we had a knowledge base. So if people had, how do I log in? Intercom would detect, log in, and suggest how do I log in, knowledge base article. And it was very, very helpful to use tools that allowed us to automate as much as possible, so that it kind of pre-filtered everything that came in. Because if you have thousands of customers and they have a problem, you need 99% of them to be self-service automated responses, because otherwise I couldn't have built features, or Danielle couldn't have done any like design or marketing. We would have just been swamped. So we built a lot of automation in the business, and we documented everything we did, how deployment works, how we export our tax documents so we can quickly send them to our tax advisor, or every single step in the business, how to respond to this question if it comes in. We had a SOP, a standard operating procedure, and we wrote these down in a document as well, which helped us quickly respond to anything and to not make mistakes while doing it. And obviously, if you have a gigantic list of SOPs, you can take that list and hand it over to somebody else, because it's essentially a manual of your business, right? And that's it's almost a franchise in a sense. And that's also what was suggested in Warlow's book. So I kind of took that to heart. And once we had that, smooth sailing when it came to process. I mean, there's still, business is always chaos, but it really helped us optimize a business with just 2 people to go to as high as an MRR as we could. And then it allowed us to very quickly transfer it once it got purchased by our acquirer. Like, it literally took us a day to hand over most of the business because we had everything prepared. Right. And so that was cool.
Yeah, that's really really impressive. And I'm just curious because coming back, to the quote you said, it's like a business that is easy to sell is going to be a good business. And why, after 2 years of working on FeedbackPanda, you reach 55K MRR, you're highly profitable, bootstrap. What kind of pushed you to sell? Was it more the opportunity? Did someone reach out to you, or did just you say you know what, maybe I want to do something different. I really love to write. I really love to share my experience with everyone. This is a success story. We had really great growth, and it's easier to sell also a business while it's growing. So what was your reasoning, and what makes you sell the business?
All of this at the same time, but I'm going to go through all of them in a little bit because there were multiple reasons, right? Just if you you may have multiple reasons not to sell, like what you just said, it's still going well, why not keep growing it? Or hey, I'm still having fun, why should I sell it? It can be the opposite as well. And for us, it was multiple things. The first thing was all of our wealth as a couple, because we were a business couple and a personal couple, was locked in the business. It was this is the most valuable thing we own, right? We don't have much savings. We don't own a home. We rented an apartment. So our wealth was locked in that business. So we wanted to diversify. We wanted to take or have the opportunity to take some of that wealth, some of that value, and put it into real estate, the stock market, whatever, right? Just monetize or turn that business into money so we could save in different ways. So we wanted to diversify. That was one of them. We always looked into this, but that was a great opportunity. And the opportunity came because somebody reached out to us. I had created a product page on Indie Hackers for FeedbackPanda and linked our Stripe account to the Indie Hackers product page. So it's a verified revenue because, Indie Hackers was owned by Stripe. So they had a really cool integration to show what it still is owned by Stripe and what any business was doing. And our curve looked really like this, right? Up and to the right. It was wonderful. It was really good. It was amazing. And it showed. You could go to the page and you saw it just going up.
Exponential.
And obviously, well, pretty linearly, but still, hey, it's a bootstrap business, right? Yeah. So if it goes up, you don't know.
Up and to the right,
keep going up forever. But as long as it's up and to the right, it can be quadratic, it can be linear, doesn't matter as long as it's going up. And people saw this. People who understood and were willing to buy businesses like ours, they went to Stripe or to Indie Hackers and they looked at these Stripe verified revenues and they saw it was going up. Danielle did a written interview with Indie Hackers after a year of running the business because somebody like Cortland found out about the business and he approached Danielle and it was really cool. And there was some buzz around the company. We didn't build it public at that point. We didn't have a strong social media presence outside of our market, but just putting the revenue on Indie Hackers was enough to attract potential acquirers. And then one day, Kevin McCardle, the CEO of SureSwift Capital, the people who eventually acquired us, he just reached out to Danielle with an email. Hey, I see your business on Indie Hackers. It's really cool. Did you ever think about selling? That's kind of what the email was about. It wasn't, hey, we're going to buy it, or you better talk to me before tomorrow. It was just really friendly. If you're interested about selling the business, talk to me. I would be open for a conversation. And it was just like that. She had a conversation with them. Then I was in the whole conversation as well. Then it was back and forth. And we talked to some people, did our due diligence on them. They did their due diligence on us. And then the process just moved from there. There was a couple of other parties involved and there were lawyers, the business process doesn't really matter much unless you want to talk about it. But it was just enjoyable to build a relationship with the acquirer before the whole acquisition happened. That was nice. And that allowed us to feel, okay, this is something good. This is not something where somebody's trying to take advantage of us. This is not a situation where we feel pressured into anything. This was a friendly, a win-win situation. Obviously, we would go out of it with a life-changing amount of money, and they would come out of it with a still growing business in a market that is totally underserved by anybody else. So win-win. That was the second one. And the third one, I would call probably the most negative one of them all. I was in the middle or on the verge, depending from where you look, of burnout in that situation. Because like I said, 2 people running a business that was making 600K annual revenue with 5,000 customers, that's a lot of pressure. Right? It's always a lot of pressure to run a business. But if you have no employees, and I was the only technical person in the company, if there was anything broken, I would have to fix it. It's on you, right? It's all on me. And Danielle tried to convince me to hire somebody, but I thought in my blindness, that's like the best way I could phrase it, is if there's not enough work for somebody to be a full-time employee, we're not going to hire anybody. It's like, why did I do this, right? Like, obviously, you could just hire somebody on retainer, or you can hire somebody for a couple hours a day, so at least you can sleep. But no, I didn't. It was a mistake on my end. But I was in the burnout like stage. I didn't feel right. I felt stressed. I felt unfocused. I couldn't focus on building as much as I wanted to. Customers like pulled me out of it all the time. You can only do so much with automation. So I felt I would like to go out to get out of this. Not necessarily because I wanted to do something else, because I didn't want to do anything for a bit. That was where I was. So the opportunity of somebody wanting to buy our business in a calm and friendly manner, the fact that we wanted to diversify, and me being in the mental health emergency state, all of this came together. Perfect time. And then we sold the business, and I immediately like shot back up into a good level for myself. And I started writing because I needed to find some kind of passion, because they had bought my passion with the business, right? I loved helping people. So I had to find something else. And that's why I started tweeting. That's why I started writing. That's where my book came from, my first one, my second one, and now my course. And now I'm just super happy to be where I am, because we sold the business at that point.
No, that's really awesome. And going back, to that stage where, you're like the technical founder, you're obviously like a real doer and a shipper, which I 100% understand this feeling of you want to do things yourself, you want to put your hand in it. And would you right now do it differently? So we have a lot of bootstrappers who are starting, and we're also technical founders listening to the podcast. So what would be your advice? Would that be to hire someone for at least 5 to 10 hours a day so they can help you out, and at least you're not the only person in charge? What would you do?
I would very quickly try to hire somebody to do the things that just take a lot of time. Right? Like when it comes to technical stuff, I love building things. That's just one of my big problems, is that I really enjoy the challenge of building. Because if you're non-technical, you don't really have a choice. Either you use no-code tools with their limitations, which is, by the way, one of the best things you can do, even if you're technical, just to use existing solutions that already give you 98% of what you need, and then validate with that, and then later build your big fancy custom solution. Or you hire somebody, because if you can't do it, somebody else needs to. And then you start thinking, okay, so what's the MVP? What's the minimum thing I need to have them built, so I don't have to pay them thousands of dollars for a week of work or something? Although you should pay people well, but what's the minimum thing that a contractor can build for me that's going to be good enough for me to work with for now? Right? To make some money so I can pay more money to more contractors later on. So if you are technical, I would still want to build most of the foundational thing myself, because if you have 0 customers while you're building, you have a lot of time to build. But the moment you have paying customers and you need to balance their needs with the needs of your marketing and your sales staff, or which is probably yourself as well, you have to start shifting your priorities. I'm half of the day I'm going to be a salesperson, the other half I'm a software engineer. And the more you push the software engineer part down, the less you can do, because engineering takes a lot of focus and it takes a lot of time. So I would use people on Upwork, or people just on Twitter. I would probably just tweet out, hey, I need somebody who can do 4 hours a day front end work for me, who's going to build new features, or who's going to clean up my code base, write tests, that kind of stuff, the boring stuff, the stuff I don't want to do, but that other people may even be more qualified than I am, right? Because I'm not good at writing test-driven software, because I've never done it, but somebody might, and somebody might actually enjoy this, or build cool front end. Also not my thing. I'm like an 80-20 person. 80% of that good enough, right? That's how it looks. That's why my software looks the way it looks. But I would hire people for that alone. And then also make sure that I would focus on the important things, because you can add feature and feature and feature. That's not going to make your business any better. It might make your product better, but your business is more than your product, right? So I would try to balance it out and really follow the 80-20 rule in most regards, right? 80% of the thing is usually good enough to see if it works or if it doesn't. But not hiring, I guess, is one of the biggest mistakes that I made. Not hiring enough. And I wouldn't probably even need to hire a technical person if I could hire a customer service rep that would deal with the incoming customer service things and only allow the really important ones to go through to me. Having somebody taking 9 out of 10
just to
of these
filter
things,
and
be like the first wave of defense, right? That I need to protect my sanity and my focus, my attention. That probably would make a lot of sense. And I have to admit, I love talking to people, but I know there's people out there who love that even more than I do, right? They will sit there in front of the service desk and they're just going to wait for somebody to come in. And that's great. That is, if I can pay somebody to do this so they enjoy the job and even help me, perfectly fine. So that's what I would do.
I think customer support, I think it took us like a year and a half to hire our first like customer support rep. And to be honest, it was like life-changing, because I agree with you. Like, I love to talking to people, but then down the line, like you also need time to do other things.
Yeah. And as a founder, you love all these things, because that's why you're a founder, right? You love product, you love people, you might hate marketing, but you kind of still like it because you want to talk to people about your product. You just don't know how to do it right yet, right? That's a problem. Sorry, but I didn't want to interrupt.
No, all good, and agree with you on that part. I was just wondering, going back to like FeedbackPanda, and you started with like very niche and with like this teacher and this type of like very specific problem. Did you like thought about trying to get like to a bigger market, or did you feel like, okay, that market was in any case not enough addressed and we have like a long way ahead that we can scale? Like what was like kind of the long-term strategy before actually deciding to sell?
So we had two options. We had the option of like staying in this market and just keeping at it, or we had the option, and we had the option, I guess, to go into adjacent markets where documentation, templated writing was also important. That one to me was always the more interesting one, but it was also the more risky one, right? Because if you have a templating system where people have like bunch of text templates and they fill in a different name, well, teaching is not the only profession that uses this. Nursing, healthcare, right? Where people have to fill out templated or like structured pieces of text reports. Anything that involves reporting in a free form, but with some kind of structure, kind of like lawyers or, attorneys, or like anything where there's a lot of writing, but it's always the same writing, our product would probably have been interesting. But we didn't know anything about these markets. We knew a lot about the teaching market. So that's why we decided to stay in that market, because not only did we understand the market itself, we also understood like the structure of the market. We were in an expanding market. China had just started with online teaching. So the one school we initially supported was called VIP Kid, which was like the biggest thing in China at this point. It had like thousands of employees that were talking to millions of Chinese parents about getting their kids in school. It was like when Danielle started out, there was like 5,000 teachers that these Chinese companies recruited in North America, in Europe, like English native speakers, just anyone in the world who could teach these kids. 5,000. A couple months into this, there were 7,000. A year into this, there was 25,000, and 2 years into it, there was 50,000 teachers. There was a lot of these teachers. And if you plot this, that's an exponential pattern, right? Because again, VC-funded company in China, and we were essentially hooked into that company, and we just like pulled along with them. That's how it worked for us. And we saw, hey, if there is this company there in China, and all these other kind of cloned companies also started to happen, because that's just how Chinese business works. You have one of the companies trying to do something cool, everybody else tries to do the same thing, and just pour in money to build up a similar big company. We started supporting other schools. And now they also pulled us along. It was, we didn't need to go anywhere else because we were in an emerging market. We were in an expansive market, and we were in the communities where word of mouth would carry us to new teachers. New teachers would learn about it because everybody in these communities, the first day they worked, would ask, how do you deal with feedback? Like, reliably on Facebook, somebody would ask this question every day. And over time, more and more people would say, well, I just use FeedbackPanda. And that was wonderful because they essentially did our marketing for us. And then that carried us into these growing adjacent markets as well, because somebody would say, hey, I don't teach for VIPKit anymore. I teach for this school now. And then we would say, okay, well, our browser extension is a pretty generic browser extension. I bet we could support this. Then I built a little feature into our browser extension, and now this school would also be supported. And all of a sudden, we would be carried into adjacent schools in the same market just from people who taught in the school that we initially supported.
No, that's really nice. And I think you're like the best example of why, like having happy customers will generate like more word of mouth and down the line more growth. And hearing you talk about how excited you were building all these features and coding, etc. Like I must ask, it's been 3 years that you're doing different things. You have an awesome audience, and we'll get to that a bit later in the podcast. But I want to know, don't you want to go back and start building a SaaS? I'm sure you have hundreds of ideas now that you've been exposed to all these new things.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I don't think I could ever not want to build one. The thing is, writing is so much fun. In many ways, coding and writing are essentially the same thing. You instruct somebody through text, right? Either you tell a machine what to do and then it does it, or it doesn't. Right? It's very clear if it does or it doesn't. Or you write for people to understand and then act on it. So in many ways, I found that writing for people can be just as fulfilling as writing for a compiler or writing for a computer. But obviously, I spent most of my life building software. So there's always this kind of, I can solve this problem, right? I can quickly build something. And I did build a little business called Permanent Link, which is I found in writing my books that the links I put in my books, in the ebooks in particular, they would quickly rot, because the internet, servers change or people remove their content, and then the link wouldn't work anymore. And it kind of sucks that if you have a paper book and there's a link in there and people try to type it into a computer even, and it doesn't work, now that's just unfortunate. Even in an ebook, you click on the link and it goes to a 404 or it doesn't even connect, right? That just sucks. So I built a little piece of software, which is essentially a link forwarder or a short link tool, but one particular for writers for books, where you have it automatically tells me when a link breaks and then automatically forwards to the web archive, to a archived version of the page. So no matter if the site is still there or not, the readers of the book today and 10 years from now, they will see what I was trying to show them. That's the idea behind Permanent Link. Now, that's a really small project that, in a world of a lot of competition with short links, is so specific that it's not really a big business. But I built it mostly for myself. It has a couple of paying customers, and I get to use it too. Now, but it's one of these projects that I had to build because I needed the technical implementation of it. But there are so many other cool, interesting projects that I didn't build because I figured I would need this, but is there a market? Are there other people to whom this is a critical problem? And for most of the things that I came across over the last couple of years, that wasn't the case. I had a lot of cool ideas, but I stopped myself from building because I knew I'm going to spend a couple months on this, but this might not make a good business, right? You probably know this. You have a great business that solves an actual problem because people have this problem, but I bet that you had a lot of ideas that were great, but actually not so great before, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think we all have, when we're building businesses, tons of ideas, and then you start digging a bit and you're like, okay, let's go back, focus. And no, but that's really nice. And the day you decided to write your book, so you were kind of on the burnout, you sold it, so removing a lot of pressure also from you, and you start writing. How do you approach this totally new thing of writing a book? And how did you think about, your marketing and growth strategy? Because back then, you were first a developer, like working a lot on the product side, etc. And now you had to kind of like switch towards I'm creating a book and then I'll have to sell it, which means that I need to do marketing, you know?
Oh boy, yeah, that was a pretty weird journey. Gotta tell you. So I started. It must have been November 2019. Just a month before the world changed, pretty much. We just came back from the first vacation that we had in years. We went to South Africa and had a really nice, like a safari. We wanted to see nature after being locked in our little apartment running a business in Berlin, where the only animals we would see was the pigeon that would come visit us on a balcony, which was really nice. It was honestly, like we even named it. It was funny. But the problem that I felt was I needed to do something with my life, and Danielle felt the same. And she found like she was a musician to begin with, so she found that in music again. But for me, it was like, what am I going to do? So I thought, okay, I have all this knowledge. And I was still kind of dealing with the emotional stress of coming out of this mental health crisis. And I was like, I want to teach people how to avoid the situations that I was in. So I had a lot of ideas on what I wanted to talk about. So I made a big list of topics that I wanted to talk about: SaaS pricing and how to avoid burnout and how to like save yourself from too many customers, like all these little topics, big old list in a Notion document. And I thought, okay, well, this looks like a blog to me. So I should probably start a blog. And that's what I did. I started a blog. I thought about it quickly. The Bootstrapped founder was the thing that I was. So I got the domain and started like a little WordPress blog. And I thought, okay, now if I keep doing this, what is this going to be? Like, am I going to, why am I doing this? Right. I can talk about a lot of things. But if nobody knows, well, then it's not going to be useful. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to go to Twitter. I had 400 followers at this point because I had used Twitter for 10 years and gotten a cool 400 followers over 10 years, which is not that much. And I thought, let's focus on this and use Twitter professionally as a way to connect with other founders. So I followed a lot of cool founders in my space, like Tyler Tringas and Peter Levels, and like all these people that I found really exciting as indie hackers that I had read about, listened to podcast episodes and from. So I followed these people and I started engaging with them. And then every week I would write an article and post it on Twitter and find conversations about the topic and post it in there as well. And over time, that exposed more people to my writing, and that exposed more people to my brand as somebody who had just sold a business, who had a lot of experience, and was now willing to share it. And over time, I started like adding more and more topics to my blog. And I didn't think about writing a book. Honestly, I never thought about writing a book until somebody told me I would buy this as a book. Like I had like 20 blog articles. I never thought about writing. I just condensed them into a guide, like I structured them in a way. And people told me, I think it was Andrew Gazdecki, who told me in a tweet, hey, I would pre-order this book. I was like, So apparently there's something here. And then I just kind of, I fleshed out the rest of it, turned it into a book, had an editor look into it. I got like an editor on, Reedsy, I think is the platform, and had a proofreader. And then I designed the cover myself. So the Zero to Sold cover that's my doing. Sorry for that. But
no, I like it, to be honest.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I just did everything, self-published a book, and over the process of writing these blog posts and the articles in the book, I did that in public, right? Because I was on Twitter talking about it anyway. I accumulated, I think, 4,000 followers at this point. When I launched the book, I had 4,000 people that could help me, and that was super helpful. And then all these people who had read my blog posts every week, now they had something else to read. And a lot of people bought the book. They got me to Amazon bestseller in the category, which was awesome. And the marketing, again, happened mostly throughout the community in which I already was. Right? Wow. Because I had built an audience on Twitter that was eager to read and share what I was writing. And through Zero to Sold, my first book, got them even more excited because they knew, oh, wow, he has so much to talk about. He knows so many different things about the business that he operated in. They asked me to write more about this and they gave me feedback about the book, what they liked, what they need more of, which then led to my second book, which I wrote because people talked to me about I need to learn more about finding my audience. I need to learn more about finding this initial group of people to serve and empower to then build a business for. Can you talk to us more about that? So I wrote about that again. And the embedded entrepreneur is my approach to embed myself in the community, learn from them, build for them. That is exactly what happened because I was in the founder community. I learned from them what they needed, and then I built the book for them. So I wrote the second book with the same spirit in mind, but I gave people this kind of framework to how to figure out who you want to help and how you can observe and listen to what they have to say so you can then build a business from that. And the embedded entrepreneur happened exactly like that in public again. I even had a couple hundred people like alpha read the book for me, which there were a lot of opinions, I can tell you that, but it led to a much better book. And that performed much better than the first book because my audience was now 20,000 people. Now I had 20,000 people who could help me. And then I had written that book. And in the Embedded Entrepreneur, there was a lot of Twitter. I was talking a lot about how to use Twitter to build this initial audience, to then figure out, what they need and how you can help them. And then people talk to me about, well, how do you use Twitter? Can you talk to us more about that? And I was like, oh, I guess. And then I turned that into a video course because I wanted to change the medium. My book is great. It's fun to write. You can hand that over to somebody, but I wanted to be present for people, and really give them the energy that I feel when I talk about Twitter. So I essentially wrote another, 40,000 words worth of a book, but I narrated the book into a teleprompter, into essentially a camera.
Yeah, so you could record it and... Yeah. I had a book in my hands, but I just kind of narrated it as a course. And that's what Find Your Following is, which performed even better than the Embedded Entrepreneur, which performed better than Zero to Sold, because at that point I had 40,000 followers. So it's just, over time, the more people you have around you interested in what you have to say, the more you can hear and figure out what they need from you the most. And that's how I approach building an audience and building products, because it's two sides of the same coin. The more you build an audience around you, the more you find ways to monetize people's need for a solution to their problem. And that then gets more people to look at you, which allows you to figure out more problems. It's just this virtuous cycle of helping people, and they give back to you. They eventually reciprocate, so I call it, because if you give, at some point, people will want to give back. And that's what Andrew Gazdecki so poignantly phrased when he wrote about this book that I hadn't even written yet. He had read all my articles. He found them interesting. And he thought, there's some more of that. And I would pay for this, right? I would give back at that moment. And that was back in 2020, I guess, early 2020. And now it's 2022. And more like 50, I don't even know how many followers I have, 55,000. It's mind blowing to me. There's so many people interested in what I have to say, but it also gives me 55,000 unique opportunities to help somebody. And that's what I get up for in the morning. That's why I'm sitting here right now, because the more people I can help, the more people I know they can help. And eventually somebody is going to come back to me and either follow me or tell somebody about my books or my course or whatever. I don't need people to spend money on me. Like just reading my work and helping somebody else, that's good enough. That's how I see it, at least. Yeah. And I think you have an awesome mindset, because I bought your course, I looked at it, I love the part when you have all these kind of FAQ, so all the questions we could have ourselves when we're building an audience. And I think it's the way you've done it, over time, by being consistent, by not trying to, look for that one viral post that's going to bring you tens of thousands of followers, but more about okay, how do I build something consistently, trying to bring value, trying to actually build relationship with people over time. So down the line, when you are doing something, and because if you keep doing things and if you keep documenting, you're going to help other people. You're going to help people who are just a few months before you, and who are going to find this valuable. And I think you've done this brilliantly, to be honest. And it's such a huge inspiration, when I see you doing this step by step, and everything you do makes a lot of sense. But I want to go back, to kind of the numbers and everything. So, because we have a lot of people in our community and in the Bootstrap world, testing, new things. And what was kind of your number of followers when you launched your first book, and how many sales did you get? Just so we get kind of an idea, if you're open to share.
Sure. I mean, let me just pull up my Gumroad here. I actually posted about this yesterday because I just reached $50,000 lifetime sales in Gumroad. Again, mind blowing because that's just from info products, from books that I wrote, and courses that I made. It's just one of the most enjoyable things is just look at the numbers, because you see in the beginning, like, people are kind of interested, and then over time the graph just keeps growing. But yeah, I launched the book, Zero to Sold, on June 29th, where I had 29th of 2020. So that's 2 years-ish ago. And that I had $1,317 of sales on the first day. And since, the world... the world has a lot of time zones. I consider 2 days always when I launch, because it takes a while for stuff to go through. And $1,200 on the second day, and those are just my Gumroad sales. I also had it on Amazon, and I had similar numbers. I think when I for these 4,000 people, I had around, must have been $4,000 or $5,000 in sales. That is like 350, 400 sales of this book, ebook or print, in the first day, first 24 hours ish around, which was incredible. Because
it's really nice.
Launch my first book. I never wrote a book before. I'm not an English native speaker, so writing anything is kind of scary, and then putting a book out there is scary too. But yeah, that was kind of the number back then. And then of course sales always kind of go down for a bit, because you have the big launch, and then they grow over time. I had a big sales day around November 27th that year, which was Cyber Week, I guess, where I had another couple $1,000. And then there was what was it? Gumroad Day? I'm just looking at it. It's just fun to see the graph, which was April 7th or something, 2021, which was another $3,500 in sales, because they just everybody sold something on that day, and a lot of people really wanted to buy it. And then there's May 19th, the next year, or 2021, which is when I launched my second book. The Embedded Entrepreneur. Around that time, I had must have been between 15 and 20,000 followers. I don't really know, honestly, but I think it was like somewhere 18 or 19,000. First 2 days of sales was let me look at the numbers here. That looks like $6,000 worth of sales.
Wow! So it's like almost 4 times like what you did with the first one.
Yeah, it definitely was more than double. And I don't have the KDP, the Amazon numbers here, but that also shot up. And then for the course that I launched at around 40,000, that was on multiple platforms again, but it was also like $6,000 or $7,000 on Gumroad alone for the first couple days. And that was much more consistent. Gumroad sales for my first month, let me do this, the last 3 months in Gumroad sales was 13,600. So I think the first month of the course alone did over $15,000 alone in course sales.
No, that's really cool.
Which is not too bad for it's 4.5 hours, of course. There was a lot of work that went into it, but for an info product, that was substantial. So I'm very happy with how that went. And that's just the Gumroad platform, right? There's still, I sell the course on Podia. It's on Udemy. It's on Skillshare. So there's all these different kind of formats in which people can consume it. And the book as well, the books, I guess, are on Apple Books. So they are on Google Play or whatnot, and they are on Amazon. They are all over the place. So there's a lot of sources. I'm trying to diversify as much as I can. But let's just say my info products, they pay for everything that I need every month. So
that's cool.
It's kind of, I'm a professional writer, apparently, which like 2 years ago, I wouldn't have thought about that, but now I am.
That's really awesome. And what was like your pricing strategy for the launch? I see a lot of people like putting maybe like for pre-launch, like a smaller price and then increasing. So first they can get like some reviews, social proof. Like, how did you approach that?
I was an absolute novice. So I had no idea how that worked, like how the publishing world worked. And I had no pre-launches. I still have no pre-launch, really, to this day. Even the course was only announced. I didn't have like kind of pre-purchasing or pre-orders or anything like that. Didn't exist. I might do that for the next one. Not sure, but I only really built up hype in a sense that I told people about it, involved them in the process, building the course and the books in public, and then telling them 2 weeks from now, big day. And then the big day came, and I wrote to people, marketed, on Twitter by getting a lot of people to retweet it, DMing people, telling them, hey, I could help you, I could use your help here, could use your support. If you want to retweet it, that would be nice. And here's a free book, like the things you would do. But my pricing strategy itself was, in the beginning with Zero to Sold, make this as affordable as possible. Because I knew that the people who would need this book were not people who had a lot of money.
Budgets. Yeah.
It's like people who want to build a business because they finally want to get out of having too many jobs, or the job is boring, or I'm not making enough money anyway. Those people don't have like $60 to put away in a book. So I priced it around $10 or something, and it still is kind of around that price. The same goes for the embedded entrepreneur. On Gumroad, it's a bit more expensive because I added a toolkit, like a Notion-based toolkit with lots of different things, additional content, I guess. And for the course, I said, first, this will be my first higher price item. And by higher price, I mean $50, which is still not too much for a 4.5-hour course, but it's still one of the most expensive things that I ever did. And I'm going that way now. Like, even if I were to write a new thing, I would still price it higher, and then just have a coupon system for people. And I use purchasing power parity pricing for the course. So if you come from a country where you can't afford $40 or $50, well, there might just as well be a Gumroad coupon for you if you come to this website, findyourfollowing.com, from a country that has a coupon, right? That's kind of how I do it. It's purchasing power adjustment.
Yeah. I think this is really cool. You need to be careful with VPN, but overall,
the tool that I'm using blocks VPNs, which is
that's good.
But yeah, and here's the thing about this. That's what I thought too. Like, when I thought about my pricing, will I have people abusing the system? Yeah. The answer is of course. Like,
but it's small percentage, no?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Like, it's a couple people who do this, but there's so many other people who will benefit from this. They would not even think about using a VPN because they don't know. But now they see, oh, wow, I can actually save like half of the price. I can finally afford it. And I'm going to tell all my friends. And then they tell at least 2 friends, and already I made more sales. Like, it's just, you have to think positively when it comes to this kind of stuff. You have to think of how much empowerment you can actually do versus the potential of abuse. That is always out there, right? There's always going to be these people.
I agree. For me, it was the same with Lemless. Like, for example, people could create like multiple free trial, adding like plus signs or doing like all this type of thing. And down the line, I was like, okay, like, if people want to cheat, they will always find a way to do it. If they want to waste their time of recreating things, etc., it's not worth like our time and investing in that, because like, even for me, like, knowing that a product can be like half price somewhere else, I don't care. Like, when I bought your course, like, I was like, okay, I know what you do. I love your content. I'm really happy to support it. I'm happy, to pay full price. And I think this is also what's part about, building an audience, building like relationships online, and doing all these things. It's I think it's really cool. And going back to audience building, like, because I know like this is your forte. How would you like approach it for like people who are listening to us and who might be at the early stage of building an audience? Where would you start, and how would you like go up the ladder?
Okay, I'm going to give a really short condensed version of my Twitter course, because that's how it works. Honestly, like, wherever you go, doesn't matter if it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, which is a place that I do it a lot on. Engaging with people, like joining ongoing conversations, going to where people already are having a chat, and then putting something meaningful into this conversation, giving people, either helping them right there with your knowledge, or helping them with a link to a source of information where you're not making money, just where you're helping somebody, right? Not an affiliate link to a book, but a link to a blog post or a link to a YouTube video that you found super instructive on the issue. Giving people something in an ongoing conversation is one of the most selfless things you can do, because you're not making money of it, but it's also one of the best things, or kind of the most selfish things you can do, because you're projecting to people that you're there to help. And everything that is related to audience building is based on trust. Like any relationship, any real relationship in your life is a trust-based relationship. You go to your bank, you give them your money, you trust that they will keep it and not waste it, right? You keep it for you and allow you to get it whenever you need it. Or you go to a store, you buy their food, you trust that it's not rotten and will not kill you. That is a relationship. And it's just a business relationship, but it's based on trust. And if you do this on Twitter, where it's personal, where it's between one person and you and that person, that trust is super important. And you can only build trust through a credibility first approach where you are putting yourself out there and you're showing that you mean it. You mean to help. You mean to support. You don't just want to sell something. You don't want to make money quick. You don't want to get people to use your product and then forget about them. You don't want that. And you don't project that. You project that you're there to support your community, to get other people to fulfill their dreams, because then they're going to come and help you realize yours. So when you go to Twitter, when you don't have a big following, when you want to build one, you don't start tweeting your really smart thoughts out into the void. Stop doing that. Lots of people start using Twitter like this. They just tweet and they hope somebody engages. Well, if 10 people follow you and you tweet something, then maybe 3 of them are going to see it, because Twitter already filters who gets to see your tweets, because you're competing with everybody else in the timeline. And then out of these 3 people, maybe one person is even going to look at it and not just scroll past it. And then maybe 1 out of 5 times they see something you write, they're going to consider liking it or consider replying. That's a fool's game, right? Because if you only have so few followers, they're not going to engage with you, and you're not going to attract more people, because only when they like it, when they respond to it, are their followers going to see it, and then they might follow you. So forget about tweeting into the void, but go to where people are already having conversations. Easiest way to do it: follow the thought leaders, the really active people in your community. And that would be people who have a couple thousand, a couple tens of thousand followers already, and turn on notifications so you see when they put something out there, something interesting. And then when it's something that you actually have something to say, don't just reply for the sake of replying. Don't be a reply guy. It's the worst guy you can be on Twitter. But when it's something that you have an opinion on, when it's something that you have some knowledge about, you know a resource, or you can actually help people right there, right then you reply. And what you do at that moment is you audition in front of their audience, right? These people who have tens of thousands of followers, they write something, they tweet about something, and a couple dozen people reply, and you're one of them. Well, first off, everybody who already replied gets a notification that something was replied to, right? And then every other of these thousands of people who gets to read the whole conversation sees you as a willing participant helping everybody else. And a couple of those people might just go to your Twitter profile and, okay, who's that person that said this really helpful thing? And they see, oh, wow, they talk about this subject, and they run this business. Isn't that cool? Follow. That's how it works. It's not you being super smart in front of nobody. It's about you being helpful and kind and considerate and supportive in front of somebody else. And that's how all audience building starts. And over time, you can start giving your really smart thoughts and putting them into a tweet. But what really, really makes the difference is engaging with people. Because like any relationship, imagine you go to a party. Imagine you go to a party, you stand in the middle of the room, and you just yell about yourself. Like, what do you think people are going to do? Right? No, you go to the group of people that's already discussing, I don't know what topics, sports or some interesting philosophical conversation. Depends on the party you go to, I can tell you that. But you stand in that group and you shut up. You stand there, you listen to people. You listen to what they're saying, you figure out, okay, this person is really smart and this person is really attentive and they are just a good listener, and you figure out how it works. And then when it's your turn to contribute, you say something that contributes to the ongoing conversation. That's why people are standing there, because they're having a conversation already. And then they invite you in, right? You become part of the group. And from within the group, you can strike up another conversation on another topic, or you get a cool new relationship with somebody, a cool contact, and that might help you in the future. That's the idea of building an audience. You have to go to an existing audience first, and then you attract people to you. And soon enough, you go to a party, people are going to stand around you, and you can tell them about yourself. But that takes a while. And to get there, you need to stand in their groups first.
No, that's I really love how you take, like the day-to-day life into this situation, because I 100% agree. And it's funny when you mentioned, like if you're just like new to Twitter and you start like tweeting about like your really smart thoughts or whatever, because I see a lot of accounts like this. And the issue is like people, get discouraged after like a month or a month and a half, just because they're like, no one's like seeing my tweets, no one's engaging. But down the line, as you said, like it's a platform where it's a social media, so you need to like create like those social connections, and it's the same as in the day-to-day life. I'm quite curious, because we also have in our listeners like people who are like with really big audiences, etc. So curious to hear like on your end, like you're at crossed 50K, like 55,000 or 60,000 even, like. Do you actually like engage or still engage a lot with other people, or are you more focused on creating your content? Like, what's right now your strategy towards growth?
So my schedule is that I write only one article a week. That's kind of my schedule. And it allows me to really focus on the topic, right? Because I use my articles in my newsletter, I use it on my blog, and I use it as my podcast. That like the three things are the exact same content. It just comes in different forms. So it allows me to really focus on the one thing that I want to talk about. And I source that from Twitter. I get my ideas mostly from conversations on Twitter. I have 56,000 followers. Let me check. But I also follow 12,000 or something. Like I follow a lot of people. 12.7 thousand followers at this point, or followees, I guess. Follows, what's the name? I follow a lot of people. And that highlights the Twitter algorithm is really good at bringing out the most engagement ready or engaged posts on my timeline. So whenever I refresh Twitter, it's completely new. But the really cool things are on top. The conversations with most people participating, and the conversations with topics that come up over and over again because they really bother people. Now, I have a lot of Twitter hygiene. I unfollow people that post about stuff I don't care about. I block them, I mute them. I'm pretty ruthless because I want my feed to be really focused on entrepreneurship. When I see somebody tweeting about sports or politics, they're gone.
You remove.
And it's unfortunate for them because they might also have really cool thoughts about entrepreneurship or building software businesses. But I don't want that. Other stuff.
You don't want to waste your time on. I understand.
And the thing is, if they only talk about it once or twice, that's fine. I don't immediately kick them out. But if I see it more and more, they go. And that allows me to have a feed of 12,000 people that talk about the things I care about. And I want to talk to them about more because they are obviously already interested in it. So I source it from Twitter. I have a lot of mentions. There's a limit in the icon on Twitter. It's 20. Like you can only see 20 plus notifications. If I click that icon away and I refresh, like in a minute or two, it's going to be back at 20. It's just a lot going on. So I use a lot of tools to actually source the things that I need to know. I have TweetDeck up with a lot of filters, and I have some tools that even send me emails when some of my books are mentioned, so I can jump right into that conversation. But most of the time, a lot of hours in the day, I just look at Twitter and I see the conversations that people are involved in, and I join in because I'm just excited to be part of a conversation. So that's kind of how I do it. So I've spent a lot of time still engaging, yes, because that's where I source my content.
No, that's really, really nice and interesting. Thanks. I mean, thanks a lot for sharing like all these value bombs. I really want to be like also like careful with your time, and I usually like finalize like the podcast with like 3 questions. The first one is, what's your like favorite book or podcast that you could recommend to other like bootstrap entrepreneurs?
Oh boy! Well, I'm not going to plug my own stuff. Obviously, that's not okay. But
we'll plug it for you. Don't worry.
Oh, that sounds not nice. Thank you so much. But when it comes to books, like the book that really, I have 3 books that made a huge impact on my entrepreneurial life. And I already mentioned Built to Sell by John Warlow. That book just made it click for me what a good business is. So read that. It's short. It's a narrative. It's really interestingly written. It's a story about a person that understands these things. And in relating to that, I understood him too. The second one is The E-Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth by Michael E. Gerber. A great book that gives you really a lot of tools that help you build your business out as a solid business that's not just technical, but also well managed and has a vision. And that's what the E-myth is about, right? The E-myth, in short, is the myth is that you only need to be technical to build a good business. That is the myth. You need to also build a business around it. You need to find a way of selling a product, and that's what the book helps you with. And the third one, I guess, would be The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. That book just gave me the motivation. Right, it gave me this kind of, oh yeah, Tim Ferriss with his like weird little body enhancing products. He just built a business around that allowed him to do whatever he wanted. He automated stuff. He found people to help VAs and all that stuff, and he built a business that didn't require him to be present. I want that. And then I read the other books, and then I built the business. And now I'm sitting here with a lot of time. So those are the 3 books that I would recommend. And awesome. I guess podcasts, the Indie Hackers podcast, listen to that every single week, and you're going to be exposed to everybody you need to know in the space.
No, that's very true. And is there because you listen to the Indie Hacker podcast a lot, is there any Bootstrap founder that you follow and you really love?
Oh man, that's a tough question because I just love them all the same. Whenever Peter Levels is on, it's interesting because he's been building $1 million businesses, and he's just an approachable person that has opinions that he talks about very clearly and is not shy to actually stand behind them. So that is always fun. But hey, every single week I get exposed to new people in the space just from the Indie Hackers podcast, and they all have a different perspective, and that is what I value. So I follow Cortland. That's the person I follow because first off, he's a great interviewer. You learn a lot about how to interview people from Cortland Allen, but he also just has extremely well-reasoned arguments that he makes, and he asks such good questions on this show. Just if you want to learn how to talk to people better, listen to the Indie Hackers podcast and listen to how Cortland Allen talks to his guests.
Yeah, that's very true. I really love Cortland too. And the last questions, because we also talks about the ups and downs, and at that point where you were a bit overwhelmed with everything. What's the one thing that you do right now, whenever you want to regain energy and get more motivation?
I read, and I read fiction. I found that reading fiction is because it's escapist, right? That's what if you read fantasy or sci-fi, it's a different world. You become somebody else. That allows my brain to reset. Also, taking a walk that works for me too. But most people try to productify, or I don't know what the word is, optimize their relaxation time to fill it with more learning. It's not a good idea. If you take a walk, you should take a walk. Listening to a podcast while you walk, that's just work while you walk. Right?
These guys,
at least it's not the best for me. Right? It's not relaxing. I'm still kind of engaged and focused and really attentive. And sometimes your brain just needs something else. Reading fiction, reading fantasy books. Had a Harry Potter books, the Mistborn trilogy, a lot of Brandon Sanderson. I got his book right here, right now, because I'm just reading that whenever I feel like it. Elantris is the book that I'm reading currently. All of this is just really good for your brain to remove all the business stuff. And in that, you will find a lot of connections that you may not have done before. And that might actually help you. But yeah, reading. That's my number one. And napping. I like to sleep. That helps.
that do help. Well, Arvid, I really enjoyed our chat. For people listening, what the best way for them to follow your updates? Is it Twitter? Is it newsletter? Where can people follow you?
It definitely starts with Twitter. I highly recommend that you also subscribe to my newsletter because we all have to fight a platform dependency risk. So do follow me on Twitter, please. It's Arvid Kahl, ARVIDKAHL. But it's figure out if you're interested in my newsletter. I write about, building in public, building an audience, SaaS businesses, writing, all these things in my newsletter every week at thebootstrappedfounder.com. Just follow me on Twitter. Don't follow me if you don't want to. Just send me a DM on Twitter because my DMs are open. If you have a question about your business or mine, I respond to every single DM. I just want to engage with people. That's kind of what I care about. So Twitter is the best place to start this from.
That's really awesome. And follow him on Twitter. Great content, and love the newsletter, love the content. So Arvid, really thanks a lot for everything. And I wish you to have an awesome day.
Thanks so much, Guillaume. That was really, really fun.
Thank you for listening to the Bootstrap Stories, the only podcast where
bootstrap entrepreneurs share their journey in all transparency. If you enjoyed this episode, don't hesitate to leave us a review. And in case you want to see the interview, all episodes are live on the Guillaume Moubesh YouTube channel. Check out the link in the description and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Have an amazing day and make sure to also join us in our amazing Bootstrap community where we all helped each other to become successful and grow a profitable business. Take care and talk to you soon.